Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar on security readiness best practice with Veeam Platform version 12, right? My name is Derek and I'm the Insight System Engineer in Southeast Asia region, right? If you are not aware, right, Veeam has released V12 on last month. So on today, I would like to take some time to share some of the security best practice, right? And we will break down today's session with couple of guidance that any IT department can use on today, regardless of you are a Vim customer or not. We will also touching on some of the best practice and the enhancement available for V12 as well. Well, many of you has been in a situation, I believe, right? So we have done an audit, or we have deployed the proper tool that we need to have, and we also finding the review and correction action has been taken when necessary. But unfortunately, right, the process typically stop right there, right? In fact, security is really something that need to be continuously revisit and review, right? It is definitely not an action which is just taken only once and then we just forget about it. As the threat factor is increased and the method of intrusion, right, become more and more complicated, right? We've seen a situation that uh, security patches just has just been released, right? uh, but it just that it hasn't applied by the customer. Right? At the end of the day, the risk and fraud in your environment are dangerous. Well, having a strong and updated security password is one of the biggest defense against the attacker. But always remember, right? What word was implemented yesterday may not actually guard you on today. Well, when come into protecting your infrastructure, right? So you typically you hear most security professional recommended a layer defense approach or defense in depth, right? The reason for this is that where we can measure protect your environment, right? It requires security each stop along the way, right? A great example is a spam, right? Spamming. We all used to getting unnecessary email and messages, right? And enterprise have implemented spam filtering to help us, right? But it is still isn't 100% accurate. Well, sometimes legitimate message are flagged, right? The time spent get through when the time spam get through, that is that's where the end user education come in, right? Another layer of defense. Teaching users some tips to identify legitimate message, right? Think about it like this, right? The attacker have to make a uh small money investment, and they have an unlimited amount of times to attack you and only need to be success once to make a profit, right? While we as a defenders, on the other hand, have to be 100% accurate all the time, right? To avoid a costly breach. Well, it is simply not possible, right? So this is why security team are investing in incident response tools and services to react faster once a breach is detected. And measurement of success, however, is the ability to restore the data from a reliable backup and to ensure the attacker has been contained. Containing the breach and proving that you have not lost data mean there is no need to pay a ransom and hope your data is recoverable. Well, the bottom line is having a verifiable and immutable backup system as the last line of defense against ransomware and modern attack allow you to resilient when all the other defenses fail. So when it comes to securing your data center, the common challenges we typically see fall under one of this silo, right? Since 2020, we've seen a massive surge in amount of business-related traffic being performed online. This is pushing a lot of organization, right, to achieve a zero tolerance for downtime and data loss. Well, unfortunately, in order to accomplish this, complex, high available, and fault tolerant infrastructure are needed. Cost aside, this can be presented set of challenges or situation involved, right? Host patches and reboot, for example. Whether automated attacks, malicious threat, enterprise have all sides of routine and find themselves and trying to keep the attacks away. Threats are also getting more sophisticated. With some cases, we've seen malicious code remaining dormant for days, or weeks, or even months, right? This could bring up challenges with keeping your backup safe. So now things such as how long you gonna keep your data for ensure that it is clean. How do you cope with the rising cost to keep the data longer, right? How are you protecting that data from attacker? Compliance is another bigger things through uh, for customer, right? There might be restriction on that, only how long you need to keep your data, but also where you can keep your data, right? There might be locality rules that which limit which cloud provider you can be using. Regulations, for example, GDPR and compliance dealing with challenges, right? Such as security storing data, but you still have to fulfill requirement, right? In some instance, you also need to know if you are able to meet your SLA for recovery point objective and times, right? Consistently measuring your current performance can be tricky, right? Every time when we do have to recover data, there might be instant that difficult to get the resources that you need because people be pulled all over places, right? Or maybe it just matter of you just don't have the compute and storage required. And and the last thing you want to have someone says during an instant is, well, I think this will work. Maybe it's a matter you can't get the professional personnel online to help you with this, or maybe the person doesn't have the appropriate training, right? And with and with growing data set, restore time are increasing, so you need to be able to develop a strategy to restore just what you need. Like, for example, granularity is important. You don't want to restore the entire database, right? When you actually just need a single table, right? Lastly, a remote user. This could be slippery. This could be slip through entry point in the corporate network. Since 2020, there are huge size of work from home stuff, right? And today, we start seeing a bit of swing back and kind of like a hybrid approach. But the end of the day, for an organization having staff that work from anywhere scenario, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the customer or end user who is sitting at the coffee shop, somewhere on the public Wi-Fi connectivity? How do you stop the laptop from affecting malware? So, what can we take away from all this? For one workload that spread all over the places, hybrid cloud is here. Now, if you experience a security incident, are you able to shift your workload immediately to the cloud? Will you have access to your backup? And do you have a playbook or process for the orchestrate recovery, right? Well, active defenses will only block so much, and we will have to assume our defenses will be breached, or that they already have been breached. We believe that the best defenses is a solid defense against ransomware. Well, everything we do is designed to help you to build a robust strategy for protecting your data. We provide data security solution that can help you ensure your data is safe, uh, is always available when you need it. Well, to help you to achieve this, we provide a software-driven platform that allow you to protect your data with immutable storage. Well, we also have a Veeam product, detect and monitor your data for threat giving, right? Add added visibility to your existing defenses and ensure that data you restore isn't going to reintroduce a threat within your environment. And most importantly, we provide testing and verification of your backup, because paying a ransom should not be more reliable than your backup, right? Modern malware is known to attack the backup layer, right? So you need to have a process in place to ensure resiliency. That is why we always talk about the 3-2-1 rules, right, for data recovery. The 3-2-1 rules say that should be at least three copy of your important data, right? At least one at least on two different type of media, and at least one of this copy being offsite, right? At the threat of ransomware has evolved, right? We recommend at least one copy of data be resilient either through the air gap, right, offline, or immutable. This is imperative for effectively defend yourself against the ransomware. So we are also added a zero to the rules because automated backup verification really ensure your data is valid and always usable during the recovery. You cannot recover data that has been captured incorrectly, right? So it is important to know, right? Veeam pioneer automated backup verification, and it is one of the reason we get such a high mark in our peer reviews, right? So as mentioned previously, one of the first steps to develop a successful cyber resilience strategy for your data is to have a secure and protected environment. This includes your protection workloads, for example, such as enterprise application, virtual machine, physical, and of course, always your backup. Firstly, let's talk about physical security, right? Some of this may seem like common sense, but malicious threat routinely gain access to network support, exploiting a gap in physical security. A great example is a situation where a threat actor show up in your office, right? Maybe a guy who delivering a package. It is easy enough to place a large box on the receptionist desk And then behind the stack, a USB thumb drive might be inserted into the receptionist's computer. Now, in this example, physical security that front desk machine from easy access could be something as simple as mounting another bridge under the desk. Similarly, some organization disabling the USB port on all their computer BIOS. Maybe physically disabling them from the motherboard, right? Correspondingly, other steps such as physically locking the server rack, server room, or office in general can assist in this, right? For area that restricted, such as a server room or data center, right? Make sure that access is always limited. Not only should the access be limited, but it should be regularly reviewed for changes, right? Also, there should be a validated way whether the user on the list, right, should should actually require the access, and if yes, right, can or should this access be limited to only specific area, right? Lastly, on the building, on building a list, also consider who may require access. For instance, if a DR event is invoked, you do not want to find out that your primary contact is unreachable or unavailable, or and if the second contact is not on the often user list, right? So if possible, surveillance options such as a video camera should be considered, right? Particularly for the public and key area, right? Think spot like front desk receptions hope, hopefully capture threat actor who trying to find a way to enter your office. Other areas, a server room or even parking lot should be monitored as well. So it's also important to review the data, right? Such as the access log, even when there is no other incident happen, right? So this could help verify people accessing resources at a valid time. Last thing you want to see is why someone accessing the server room at 12 o'clock at the midnight when there is no changes being scheduled. Now, let's not forget about remote office or branch offices, right? Typically, this will be smaller in size, both physically and from a headcount perspective, right? So this often mean that same resources that head office has, such as dedicated server room or security equipment, may not be available there, right? In many cases, large offices are given the gold treatment, right, by security, and they will have not only physical security system in place, but also tools like intrusion detection and prevention system, right? Branch office quite often will not have all this, right? But they might still have connectivity access back to the large office network, right? Remember that it could be via the VPN. So consider treating each office as a different security zone or domain, right? All traffic travel back and forward should be analyzed and monitored. Right? In the event of breach in the branch offices, having the ability to quickly cut off the access can save the business from significant damage, right? Um, Thinking about secure your infrastructure, you want to create a secure foundation by default. There are many tools available today, right? From a hardware perspective, even within the server itself, right? Tools such as a trust platform model. This has been usable in VMware vSphere, right? EXX since about think version 6 or and 7. Similarly, are you able to actually store your data encrypted at rest on your storage system? For out of band, for out of band management, things like IDRAC and ILAW, make sure that you isolate those network interface. You want to make sure that they are in a separate management network. Some things that someone from accounting department cannot be accessed, for example. If you are using an Active Directory, make sure that you assigning a AD group to log in, right? So that everyone in that group should actually have access, right? Second things, right? Isolate and encrypt network traffics. Always consider what encryption is needed for traffic on your network. Should your backup job be sending encrypt traffics? Also, if you are using using a network services, for example, like a SSH, right? Ensure that strong algorithm are being used, right? And next thing, have consistent life cycle policy is important as well. Right? Many of us has been in the industry for a while, right? And might remember this. Back then, when virtual machine was in popularity time, they quite often they quite often different mindset on the virtualization, right? They always treated a bit more disposable because that's how easy, right, to create a virtual machine. But in fact, you should treat virtual machine much more same as the physical workload. So things like OS patches, security updates, configuration, even the hardware firmware, right? Are they all new release or a driver might expose a security hole? So one possible use hardened template whether or not that it is a physical or virtual workload. Make sure that workload you deploy are always secure by default. Well, and lastly, make sure that you remove any unneeded component. Things like such as are you running an IIS services on a server that actually have no reason to have it running on there, right? From a password standpoint, strong password are of the utmost important, right? They protect your accounts and device from unauthorized access, keeping your sensitive personal information safe as well. So uh, the more complex the password, then the more protected your information will be from cyber threat and hacker. One of the main reason to have a password manager, right? So is to avoid manually typing in your account credential all the time. So most password manager have the feature to generate robust password that guard you and your organization against reputational damage and loss of revenue, right? Right, let's switch the gear now to Veeam perspective. All right, so what is Veeam CDP, continuous data protection, right? CDP is all about near zero RPO. So we are referring RPO, restore point objective, measure in second, right? In second, not even minutes, not hours, right? And it is all about protecting those mission critical workload require lowest RTO and RPO and minimize in loss of data should something happen in your environment, and again it's in second, right? So well, it works kind of similar when you configuring a traditional Veeam replication. If you ever configure a regular Veeam replication job, well, I think you're ready to set up a CDP. That's replica is sitting over there in your secondary disaster recovery site. and it's just the matter of powering it on, and you are back into business. So super low RPO and super low RTO. So again, where could you use CDP? And I think some of you got the answer right. And yes, CDP works with VMware environment, and typically VMware vSphere API for IO filtering is being leveraged on. Of course, there are a couple of different components you need to set up before you creating your CDP policy, right? Right. This including, for example, your Veeam backup and replication server, your source and your target VMware host, your VMware vCenter, and your source and target Veeam CDP proxy, right? And then trusted immutability. Well, if you are not familiar with the terms what immutability is, well, it is related to storage first of all, and essentially mean that once the data is written to your storage disk, it cannot be erased, modified, encrypted until the specific immutability time period has last or has expired. So why is it an important feature? Well, it prevents any changes written to your backup file. Let's use ransomware as an example. Once a malicious code make its way and it enter to your network, well, it will start encrypting any data it could find, right? If if it somehow find a way to your backup repository, and then your backup will be encrypted and inaccessible, right? So they will be encrypted definitely, unless they are sitting on a immutable storage. In this case, the ransomware will not be able to, modify those files, and therefore not able to encrypt them. Also, if you unfortunately have an unhappy employee and he is looking to cause some damage, right? So immutable storage will prevent them from deleting the data as a human standpoint, right? So Veeam Data Platform has many different ways to support immutability, right? In many locations as well. So this flexibility allow you to use immutability on where do you see fits, right? And more importantly, no login into your specific vendor. In the recent release V12, immutability is support on a Linux hardened repository through the S3 compatible object storage, and also through many other cloud provider partner or service provider, right? Okay, so single use credential. So it's a credential that used only once to deploy Veeam Data Mover while you adding the a Linux server to the backup infrastructures, right? So for example, if you want to use a physical Linux infrastructure server as your hardened repository, so these credentials are not stored in the backup infrastructure, so that the backup file will be safe even the Veeam backup and replication server is compromised, right? Well, the V12 Veeam hardened repository is a Veeam native solution to provide a trusted immutability for backup of Veeam backup and replication servers on a Linux server, right? By by supporting generic Linux server, so we ensure that customer always have a choice about their hardware without vendor login. So first of all, deploy a Linux hardened repository has never been simpler, right? The process is streamlined as you do require some knowledge over the Linux, right? Again, single use credential is remain required to provide additional layer of security. And lastly, in V12, when you deploy a Linux hardened repository, right? When you choose the option hardened repository, well, now there is no option to turn off the immutability. The whole idea is that dedicated Linux hardened repository will only support immutability. Well, the traditional Linux repository with immutable storage built in, right, is still available, of course. Well, previously, right, object storage, I mean, in the previous version, right, object storage was limited to scale out backup repository as part of your capacity and archive tier. However, with V12, you can now write backup direct to object storage, right? Additionally, the new direct to object storage support immutability as well, while is by utilize the S3 object lock features. Restore point will be protected for the entire retention period. So if you want to have a long-term retention of your backup, well, this can be accomplished by using the grandfather father son policy, right? Correspondingly, the direct to object storage is a great alternative for a situation, right, where some customer or some organization may not have the required Linux knowledge to configure a hardened repository. Well, object storage offer a simple and low overhead method to implement immutability. Right? For the use case that require immutable storage as enterprise scale, right? Scale out backup repository with capacity tier or archive tier can be used to achieve this, right? Essentially, capacity tier is an additional uh, tier of storage that can be attached to the scale-up backup repository. Well, it consists of multiple capacity extent and can be either a cloud-based object storage repository or an on-premise object storage repository, right? As part of the scale-up backup repository policy, data from the local storage performance tier, or you can say performance extent, can be transported to the capacity tier for long-term storage. In this case, when object storage being used as capacity tier, immutability can be easily accomplished by utilize the same level of S3 object lock features that we have talked about earlier on. So in this use case, you got the option, right? So whether you want to turn on the immutability or leave it unchecked. Well, here is another cool security feature in V12, right? Now, with the ability to enable multi-factor authentication, right? MFA for the Veeam backup and replication console login. Veeam backup and replication support MFA for additional user verification. So as each time you log on to the console, right, a one-time password OTP will be generated in the in a mobile authenticator application, right? It is used and as a second verification method, right? Combining with login and password credential is definitely create a more secure environment and protect user accounts from being compromised, right? By the way, in case a service account is being used, well, MFA can be disabled for certain accounts. With this, we ensure that only valid users are accessing your Veeam backup and replication servers. Well, another security improvement is that option for automatic session log off. Well, this essentially help to reduce the number of user session open, right, for long times, right? By setting this, the either you can setting this by using the either timeout period to automatically log off any remote user log into the consoles. Well, we also introduced the support for group managed service account in V12, but essentially application aware image processing is an important feature to ensure that your data is backed up consistently. But in summary, it is a process that interacts with the guest OS to ensure that application is being captured accurate and consistent during the backup. A common example would be a database applications. So if application awareness is not used, then a crash consistency backup will be created, right? In this case, everything written to the virtual disk will be backup. However, the problem come in when application, right, may still have some data in the memory that not written to your virtual disk, right? With application awareness processing, Veeam is able to interact with the guest OS and also the application to ensure and commit everything, right, are written to the disk during the backup running. In order to accomplish this, guest OS creation uh, need to be a guest OS credential, right, need to be provided for the interaction. Well, with V12, group managed service account will allow to get password credential on demand from the Active Directory. So similar to a single-use credential we talked about earlier on in the Linux hardened repository, a GMSA does not store password in Veeam database. As a result, it does not need the administrator to manage the password, as this role is performed by Microsoft Windows operating system, right? Randomly generate a complex password are automatically changed every 30 days, which reduce your risk of the risk of brute force and dictationary attacks, right? So to determine best practice is being implemented, well, V12 added best practice analyzer in the Vim console. So Vim backup and replication now allow you to check your backup server configuration on demand with a built-in tools, right? So this to ensure it follows security best practice for Microsoft Windows Server operating system and Vim backup infrastructure component, right? Correspondingly, this check is run real time when you run it. So if you make any changes, you can immediately rerun the analyzer tools to see the impact and make sure things are rectified. Well, in V12, we also increased the Kerberos support as security become more concern and on top of everyone's mind, right? We've seen a lot of increased requirement coming in for environment that leverage Active Directory as part of their identity management strategies. The wide in Kerberos support, right, will provide yet another layer security, right? Vim backup and replication support Kerberos authentication for all components of backup infrastructure. For example, a Vim Explorer, Vim Agent, Vim Plugin, and Vim Backup Enterprise Manager. So Kerberos in Windows require Active Directory. So it is irrelevant for workgroups, right? Just to add on. Well, applying best practice and security configuration is just one component when it comes to building a strong risk management plan. So having a tools identify threat earlier is key to minimize impact when the threat does or does make a way into your network, right? Right. We want to essentially well, we want to be a essential part of the solution. And this is not to say that we are malware detection company, right? So we're not going to be like some folks pretend that we are get into the malware detected space. But what we are doing is making sure that if there is any abnormal changes happen and that is unexpected or unusual, you can be always notified automatically, because at the end of the day, we expect the alert or the initial sign of the attack to be some kind of alarm or flashing light. Well, the reality is that the majority of incidents start out with a user, right, is claiming that, hey, IT, my laptop is uh, acting funny, or worst case, they get a pop-up say you has been infected. So your data is encrypted. Nobody like to see that, right? So having more information that we can access and more data feed into our alert infrastructure that indicate an attack is going to help your response team narrow down the scope of infection earlier. So specific to ransomware, right? Veeam can generate alerts that indicate an attack and help your response team to narrow down the scope of the infection. A quick example, right? So in this sample report, we identified that there are 93 unprotected VMs, right? Probably you should take this list of unprotected VM report, right? Review them periodically, validate periodically, and verify should we actually protect them, right? Well, when ransomware attack, typically they encrypt files, right? Everyone know that. Well, which also happen within a guest OS. So, and because of these files are drastically changed, it certainly create abnormal or large backup file size, right? So, so definitely, right, when they encrypt the files, definitely it will create some abnormal activity, right? So Veeam uh, has built-in report that help identify and alert when any incremental backup file size is seemingly increased drastically in size. Also, because encryption is a CPU heavy task, right? So high CPU usage level can be another indicator of the same symptom, right? Particularly when there is a large volume, same event occur at the same time. When these two actions occur, Veeam can generate possible ransomware activity alarm and alert the administrator accordingly. So this alarm can all be customized and fine-tuned, like things like CPU threshold, data store read write I/O, network transmit rate, and specify a length that to monitor for. So further to that, you can create multiple versions of this alert and apply them to different scope of workloads, right? So you may have some workloads, for example, experience high CPU spike routinely. So you may not want to monitor network state for use case that some application may always heavily utilize your bandwidth, right? At the end of the day, it is important to fine tune as many false alarm as possible. So by creating a tailored and customized alert for your various workload, right, it is can obtain an increased level of confidence and facility. Well, you already touched on immutability, right? And why it is so important when come to protect your data. In V1, V12, there is a new immutability workload reports, right? So you which will you to uh, allow you to quickly identify which of your backup job um, are or are not storing the backup file on a immutable storage, right? The breakdown of the report will include details like overall number of workloads protected or not protected by immutability, total number of restore points stored on immutability storage, as well as by workload types. Of course, in a perfect world, all your backup should be stored on a immutability storage. However, well, this isn't possible, right, in real world. This report can help you to identify what backup are in greater risk and regularly review this with your stakeholder is recommended, right? Well, with the enhancement of direct backup to object storage in V12, there is a lot of customer excited about it, right? So as object S3 object log will make the path to immutability a lot more simple and easier. With that in mind, Veeam has extended many of these existing reports to provide a full visibility of direct backup to object storage with immutability. Being alert about job successful or failure is something that many of us take for granted, right? An email may be received, we see that right job are successfully daily, and then we move on the day. An area that most professionals don't spend a lot of time on this is auditing for changes, right? Being able to pull a list when a backup job is altered and by who is something that should be done regularly as well. If you with a VM is removed from a backup job, it is important to understand who did that uh, and why he did that, right? Eventually, Vim1 has many other jobs look into this area as well. So, and what we're starting to see from an attacker perspective, as they are innovating and they are automating, you can never have enough visibility into your network, right? So as a result, understand that the job is running is great, but it is also important to understand that it is run as expected and they are completed as expected. And so that you are in fact backing up the data you expected to back up. If that is not happening, we want to make sure you get notified immediately. This seems obvious, but that is not the way a lot of backup systems tend to works, right? They're looking at the surface level data, right? If I want to recover, I need to protect it, right? Find all asset, make sure job are running, automated repair of the job, right? So through the source production VMware infrastructure, the Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator offer orchestration for CDP, VM replication, backup, as well as storage snapshot, right? In addition to that, on the right side box over there, Orchestrator also come with number of dynamic report that allow you to obtain summary information to document the recovery process, checking plan configuration before running orchestration plan, and obtain the result of plan testing and execution. Essentially, you can then use the report to send them by email to the auditor and manager, leveraging it to troubleshoot issue to prevent the recovery process from completing successfully, right? So all these reports are sent as PDF and a words docx file and dynamically update whenever there is any update from your source job policy, right? For example, a new VM been added to your replication job, everything will be reflected in the report, right? Correspondingly, before you run an orchestration plan, you can use an isolated orchestrator data lab to test your entire plan, including the verification of VM backup, replicas, and storage snapshot. Right? Again, all change made to the VM during the lab session will be discarded as soon as the test process is over. So with that, you can ensure that your DR compliant requirements are met, generate and automatically update documentation for DR procedure to eliminate the problem of outdated DR plan, right? So with one click recovery. effortlessly, right? So we've been talking about identify threat typically from ransomware or threat actor. However, there is one threat that majority of organization are aware of, but actually don't do much about it. I actually refer to testing your backup regularly. So an untested backup, right, isn't really considered a backup after it all, right? Ultimately, it is the data recovered that we all care about. So how often do you test your backup? Right? To be honest, the ideal answer is every day, so that you can 100% certain if you ever need to do a restore. The backup is valid and restorable. Right? The worst time is that you realize that your backup is failed is right. The worst timing, right, for realize that your backup is failed is during a crisis when you're trying to restore the data, right? In short, right, backup is easy, but recovery is hard. And what I mean by that is there are multiple things could go wrong during a recovery. For example, maybe application processing wasn't turned on, right? It was not turned on. Application uh, processing and the critical database are missing. So another great example might be a pending OS reboot, right? Due to a patch update. For a crash consistency backup was taken, the OS might not actually boot up properly because of this. Well, in real world, it is simply not possible to manually test every single backup for every machine, right? And it would require a massive amount of time for most businesses. Well, even manually testing weekly or monthly is better than never, but it still leaves 6 days in a week, right? Or 29 days in an average month because where the backup are untested. So Veeam introduced a feature called Sure Backup to address this, right? And it is driven by policy job. This feature allow a schedule boot up of the backup VM in a sandbox environment, which are then automatically verified without any manual process. So on top of that, Vim can also optionally scan the backup for silence data corruption and malware before they are booted for extra peace of mind, right? Next, let's switch the gear to talk about most important thing, the recovery, right? As without a proven way to recover, everything else are pointless. So may so some of you may be familiar with Vim recovery scenario graphic, right? So in V11, we got 91 way to get your data back. In V12, we are up to more than 100 ways to get your data back when you do a recovery. That's a lot of different way, right? Of course, all this is useless if you don't have access to your data center or servers, right? So many people are surprised that during a ransomware attacks, law enforcement can seize an entire data center as evidence. So it's essential to create a smoke hole scenario, right? But you can still see the building. Vim unique approach to data mobility assists organizations of all sizes with their data management tasks, right? It provides a portability, protection, and restoration of workload across any cloud or platform, right? Including intuitive guidance on how to best store and archive and achieve protected data using the skill option that cloud provider. So the the portability of your workload across Amazon, Azure, and Google Cloud mean no change in format and the ability uh, to migrate and simply restore to any cloud target while maintaining continuity. This means that you can get back to normal operation while the ransomware investigation is happening. So beyond the resilience, you can use a cloud target to reduce your storage cost through the automated tier storage moving right by moving older backup file to the lower cost cloud target while still ensuring easy access if needed. So best of all, support of AWS, Azure, and IBM Cloud mean flexibility and no vendor login. You can store data in the cloud without the need to purchase extra product or pay any unexpected cloud tax. Well, and all of that come together through the orchestration. Veeam continue to iterate on the VDRO feature set, right? The DRO makes stride in the democratization and the traditional DR plan by providing orchestration of not only Veeam replicas but also Veeam backup and storage. Right? It now offers support for automating recoveries of storage snapshot backup, replicas, and CDB replicas. It's also combined with the new continuous data protection capability support in Veeam backup and replication 11 onwards, right? Veeam bring even more support for backup and DR disaster recovery around all aspects of your environment. Well, flexibility with regards to restore location is a key requirement, and we can't assume the source location is still a variable always. With Veeam Recovery Orchestrator, plans can be created bringing workload up at a net new location, right? Features such as a cloud DR, or like you are restoring a virtual machine or workload protected by Veeam agent directly into Microsoft Azure or AWS, right? In the event your physical data center of your physical hardware is unavailable, Orchestrator can automatically recover your physical agent workload directly into a vSphere VM if you wish, right? And lastly, talking about a clean DR, right? Orchestrator scan restore point as part of the recovery process. So you can go through there. If a threat is detected during the scan, then you go back to the previous restore point in order to ensure that you getting a clean data back, right? That is why we taken a holistic approach to the ransomware problem, right? It's not just one product or one feature, full full solution that combine best in class technology with expertise throughout your data protection journey to ensure that you have the flexibility in design for lower operation costs and getting a better TCO, right? You'll always get visibility with detection, monitoring, and alerting. Well, data mobility to get back to operation during the investigation, and then rapid, reliable recovery is more cost effective than paying the ransomware, or as always. So, well, last of all, I would like to invite everyone here to register by scanning the QR code in this deck so that you can watch the latest update of Veeam product from our Veeam on 2023 updates. And lastly, before we end this session, well, I'm excited to announce that Veeam on 2023 is coming soon, right? This is the Veeam conference event of the year, and it will be held on 22nd of May to 24th in Miami. So please come join our event in the sunny Miami Beach, all right, or online. You can do it online from everywhere, right? You can register for in person now so that you can watch the latest update of Veeam product from our Veeam on 2023 updates, right? Feel free to scan the QR code for more details. And again, I will leave the screen for a couple of seconds. Well, that's end my session for today, right? So, well, okay. So, shall there's a question in the question box, right? Shall we receive the slideshow used by on today? Yes, definitely. You guys will receive the slideshow after this, right? Thank you, and have a nice day, everyone.